Hello everyone and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Thursday, August 25th, and I hope y'all are having a spectacular day so far. I'm going to be your host for the day, William Willis, and in today's show we're going to bring you some great content with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'll start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines from around the world. Then we're going to go over to Alan, where he sits down with Kevin Thompson, Chairman and CEO of Tricentis, where Kevin will talk about his prediction of an explosion of business applications that will be developed in the near future. Next, Alan will talk with Brian Gilmore, Director of IoT and Emerging Technology at Influx Data. In this interview, Alan and Brian will discuss InfluxDB native collectors, a new suite of capabilities to expedite time series data collection, processing, and storage in the InfluxDB cloud. Then we go to RSA, where Alan sat down with Rich Mogul, CEO of Securosis, where Alan and Rich talked about Firemon alongside his journey towards joining the company. Then we're joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on to tell us more about some of the upcoming webinars that we have. Then, in case you missed it, we have another showing of the first episode of the new series, Engineering the Change. This series follows 3 winners of the Engineering the Change scholarship program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare for careers in software engineering. We then go to RSA, where Mitch was joined by Jonathan Simons, CMO at MinIO, to talk about object storage. And we'll go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con, where Mitch met with Tim Eads, CEO at vArmor, to discuss why security companies must become data companies. And then finally, we're going to finish up our broadcast today with 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first, Mike interviews Steve Fazio, Product Manager for Data Catalog at Talend, where Steve explains what data governance as a service is all about. And then Mike will interview Yusuf Khan, Vice President of Technical Marketing for Cisco, where Yusuf will explain how APIs are driving the convergence of NetOps and DevOps. That's what we have coming for you here on today's episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for August 25th. First up, Twitter's former head of security has stated that the company misled regulators about its poor cybersecurity and inability to root out fake accounts. Peter Zacko, who served as the company's security chief until earlier this year, filed a complaint with the SEC, the FTC, and the DOJ, containing several accusations. Among these is that Twitter violated the terms of a 2011 FTC settlement by falsely claiming it had put stronger security features in place to protect the privacy of its users. Additionally, there are claims against the deceptions and handling of its fake accounts. This complaint could create serious problems for Twitter, as they are already in a legal battle with Elon Musk over issues regarding fake accounts. Next, Oracle is facing a new privacy class action claim in the US. The lawsuit was filed as a 66-page complaint in California, which asserts that Oracle has developed detailed dossiers on up to 5 billion people, violating the privacy of pretty much everyone on Earth. According to the complaint, Oracle has collected vast amounts of data from internet users without their consent, and it uses it to profile these individuals. The complaint against Oracle alleges several violations of laws, including the Federal Electronic Communications Privacy Act, the Constitution of the State of California, and the California Invasion of Privacy Act. In other news, NASA has recently captured new telescopic images of the planet Jupiter, which will give scientists more clues to Jupiter's inner life. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope used its near-infrared camera to showcase details of the planet, its rings, and satellites. If you notice, the red on the photo shows auroras, while the yellows and greens show hazes around the planet's poles. The white bands show cloud coverage, including the Great Red Spot, and the darker areas indicate little cloud coverage. This image gives new information of the planet that will help scientists study the dynamics and chemistry of Jupiter. Next up, in order to build Intel's $20 billion semiconductor manufacturing operation in Ohio, it says it will need around 7,000 new construction workers. However, the state has already acknowledged that there is not currently a pool of 7,000 extra workers in the central Ohio area with all the ongoing construction. With a booming construction industry and a shortage of construction workers, Intel is struggling to get the workers it needs to complete the new plant. And this construction problem will only be exacerbated by future plans for their 3 new data centers by Google and Amazon in the same area. Combine this with a potential housing shortage risk from incoming workers, and it makes it an interesting question for how to deal with this labor shortage. Next up, Instagram is testing a new feature called Candid Challenges that appears to be similar to the fast-growing social media platform BeReal. BeReal has gained an immense popularity over the past year, as it has been downloaded 40 million times in 2022, and it has earned the top spot in Apple's App Store. On BeReal, users will receive a notification at one random point each day to post an unfiltered front and back photo of what they are up to at that particular moment. According to the reports, Instagram's Candid Challenges would work quite similarly. This is not the first time that Instagram has decided to copy another social media platform's features, as for the case with TikTok and Snapchat. Candid Challenges is currently being tested internally, but has not been yet released externally. On Container Journal, we have an article discussing Buoyant's update to the open source linkered service mesh. This new update will add support for root-based authorization policies that enforce zero trust policies within microsegmented Kubernetes environments. Linkered's CEO, William Morgan, says that with this new update, microsegmentation of microservices will be easier to maintain. To learn more about the recent update to Linkerd, go to Container Journal. On Security Boulevard, we have an article talking about how AWS has streamlined data protection by simplifying snapshot creation on Amazon's EBS service. IT teams can now choose the specific volumes they want to exclude using a simple single API call, which will reduce overall costs by reducing the number of snapshots that would have to have been created. To learn more about Amazon's new functionalities and what that could mean for the industry, go to Security Boulevard. And finally, on Digital CXO, we have an article discussing how to solve simple help desk problems using an IT service management solution. An IT service management solution can empower organizations to help them serve others in an organization quickly. Implementing one of these solutions can help issues such as ticket logging, as well as ticket management and information collection. To learn more about how an IT service management platform can solve help desk problems, go to Digital CXO. And that's what we have for today's Techstrong News Recap.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem. Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV segment. I am really happy to have my next guest on here. For those of you who watch Techstrong TV, you know one of my favorite kind of reoccurring series is our DevOps Unbound series. And if you haven't caught it, catch it. We've been doing it now for almost 2 years, and every 2 weeks or so we explore a new area of DevOps. And we've had some amazing guests, some amazing discussions. Every 4 to 6 weeks, we do it with a live audience as a roundtable that you can participate in. And some of those have been off the charts. We're really blessed and lucky to have our friends at Tricentis sponsor DevOps Unbound from day one. They've been with us, partnered with us through the whole thing, and continue to do so. But I've never been able to get this guy on before. He's the CEO of Tricentis. Let me introduce you to Kevin Thompson. Hey, Kevin, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, Kevin, you've been CEO of Tricentis now, I guess, for a little more than a year, right? Maybe a year and a couple months, 2-3 months?
Almost a year and a half now. Time flies.
Yeah, wow. Well, in COVID, you lose track of time, right? It's
yes, you do.
Groundhog Day. But anyway, for those people who aren't familiar with Kevin Thompson, why don't you give them a little background? And while you're at it, a little Tricentis background.
Sure. So maybe I'll start with a little background about me. I've been in tech for a really long time now. I started my career in tech back in public accounting so many years ago. We won't talk about how many. And then I was one of the early management team members at Red Hat. Back when we were a brand in search of a business model, trying to figure out why would anyone pay for free software. I was part of the team that figured that out. I went to SaaS Institute for a couple of years, which is one of those very private software companies that a lot of people wonder, what's real, what's not. It was a great experience for a couple of years. Then I was the CEO at SolarWinds for almost 15 years before I came to Tricentis about 18 months ago. So I've had the kind of great good fortune of being in a lot of very unique software companies. I haven't been in I guess what I call a normal software company yet. And I would say Tricentis is another one of those very unique opportunities. And when I bumped into Tricentis and I met the company back in 2021, there was a lot of opportunity that got me excited about what we might be able to create. If you look at our history, we've been involved in testing and test automation for almost 15 years now. We started out as a services company that then Wolfgang and Franz turned into a software company that really was just in Europe for a really long time. And then we began to expand globally and have created a whole lot of momentum. And I think we have today a very broad set of capabilities, but I think the opportunity is even so much larger. I think we've scratched the surface of ultimately what we can become and what we should become. A lot of it being driven by a lot of the topics you talk about on your series around DevOps, changing how we build technology, how we deploy technology, how we think about using and interacting with technology. And when you step back and say, okay, there's testing, which we're the best in the world at. So we have the broadest set of capabilities and end-to-end continuous testing, from functional unit testing to load and performance to test management and a number of other capabilities around that make our offerings unique. We're also, I think, incredibly well positioned to think about the next version or next generation of what does it mean to deliver a very high quality piece of software to a user, whether that user is an internal customer or whether that's an external customer that you're trying to serve. And that's what we're focused on doing and what got me excited. The market we're in is great. I want to be number one in that market. Today, we're number two, measured by revenue, number one, measured by momentum and technology coverage. But that market is just the beginning, I think, of the opportunity we will address over the next 2, 3, 10 years. So I think it's a really interesting space to be in because the way we build and deploy and use software is changing so rapidly. And many of our customers don't have all the tools they need to be able to make sure they're delivering that very high quality piece of software to their business that ultimately delivers the intended business outcome and creates the business value they believed it would when they invested in it.
Yep. So Kevin, you're preaching to the choir, man. You're talking, we're talking. You know, when I've also been around the corner a couple of times. I think in the software business, being normal is overrated. Right?
I agree. It's a little bit boring anyway, right?
It really is, and it's not exciting. It's about excitement. You're right. Tricentis has staked a huge claim as a leader in especially. Look, when I first started DevOps.com 8-9 years ago, right, there was talk of QAs going away. We're going to automate testing. There'll be no more testers. There'll be no more QA as we know it. But nothing ever goes away, right? It just evolves. But Tricentis, early on, and you're right, Wolfgang, the team in Austria, and then coming here to the U.S. and globally, you guys really became the leader in automated testing, but not automation for the sake of eliminating humans. Automating for the sake of going faster, improving. I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive. I'm going to improve your quality by going faster through automation. Almost like, wow, let me wrap my head around that, right? Going faster, I'm going to have higher quality. But that's what it did, and I think that was the secret sauce, right?
I think a lot of the thing that Wolfgang and Franz and team really understood is it's about understanding where your risk lies. So where does my risk lie as I'm developing, deploying, buying, deploying, upgrading a piece of technology? Where does the risk lie? Where do I need to make sure I'm doing a phenomenal job of ensuring that the application is working the way it was intended to work and that the user experience is what it needs to be in order to deliver that business outcome? So by taking that approach based on risk first, then automation to allow you to address that risk very, very quickly, I think that was a big change in the way we thought about testing workflows and testing applications, right?
Absolutely. So Kevin, you and I both seen these before, these kind of cycles and periods. I think you touched on it. Let's be really clear. I think we're at another inflection point in our technology cycles where, man, the future's really exciting. There's exciting stuff going on. We've kind of wrapped our heads around the cloud, but just as we wrapped our heads around cloud, there's this new frontier of edge and IoT devices and do anything from anywhere kind of stuff, right? Testing, of course, is part of that, but really what's driving it is our ability to do more bring software where it hasn't been brought before through automation, quality software, doing new ways of thinking about it. It's an exciting time. Tell us kind of your vision and by, I guess, extension, Tricentis, about what this opportunity is out here.
Yeah, we've been spending a lot of time over the last 18 months since I've been at Tricentis really trying to grasp the opportunity that's beginning to unfold, not just for us, but for a lot of other software companies. But as we think about the way we've changed how we build technology, and you and I have been around a long time, and a lot of our viewers have probably been around a long time, we remember the waterfall development methodology. And I remember prior to waterfall when waterfall was new. I remember when we implemented waterfall at my, one of my first early software companies. So I think that, the number of changes, and not just how we build technology. Now my dog has joined the video. Not just how we build technology, but how we use technology and the speed at which we want to put new capabilities in the hands of our users. That's what has caused us to step back and say, what is it we should be providing to our customers? How do we make our customers successful when they're building technology in a full DevOps model, but also still building technology in some of the more traditional waterfall models that we built technology before? And inside the same organization, we have different development methodologies that ultimately we have to bring together. We have this explosion in custom apps, SaaS apps, or cloud-based apps, still a whole lot of on-premise applications that are now connected together. And we have to make sure we're not just testing an individual application, but we're testing across the entire application environment. And that environment is in a lot of different places. We've got to test at different rates of speed now. So if you think about continuous development and continuous deployment, how do we enable that while still testing? Because if you don't test really well, which we've not been testing very well in the DevOps world for the last several years, you end up letting the users be the testers. you end up with a lot of problems you're trying to fix on the back end that you really should be fixing in the development process. So as we think about testing, I think the approaches we have today are phenomenal. We're great at it. We've added a number of capabilities. We've added technologies really aimed just at developers. They're using those testing technologies inside of the CI/CD pipeline as they're building and deploying continuously. Ultimately, I don't think even that's enough. I think we've got to think about things like error monitoring. We got to think about areas like security. We have to think about the way we allow you to test and move quickly based on different applications. And so the vision we have is no matter what type of application you're building, no matter where it's deployed, where it's being built, how it's being used, then we need to be able to provide you a suite of capabilities that allow you to make sure that entire application environment is working the way it's intended to work, and that we can move at your speed, not at our speed. And that's a challenge, right? I think if you look at all of the vendors that are in the test automation space, I don't think any of us are where we ultimately need to be. I think we're ahead, but we know we're not delivering all the capabilities our customers need yet. And in some cases, our customers don't even fully recognize what it is that they need. They know they have a gap. They don't know exactly how they want to solve the gap. And so we're spending a lot of time thinking about that problem. So as I indicated, we've added technology that really is just aimed at developers and DevOps teams. We are taking a lot of the capabilities we've historically had. We're moving those capabilities to the cloud, while at the same time, we're not porting, we're rewriting from scratch brand new products that solve a lot of the problems our historical products have solved, but solve them in a fully cloud native context without losing all the knowledge we have of very specific application environments. So it's a really big opportunity. Our challenge is going to be more one of prioritization. Think about all the big applications we all rely on today. Very few of the testing tools out there have deep context, even those packaged apps, much less all these custom applications, which is 70% of what businesses run today, they built or have built specifically for them. So there's, our goal is to cover all of that. Today, we have some ability to cover it all, but we want to cover it all very, very deeply with a lot of context and knowledge of the environments that we are trying to, I'll use a word for a second, testing, but I really mean the environments that we're doing work to ensure that a high quality piece of software is being developed and provided to the organization.
Yep. And I'll tell you, I think the other thing that is not a fly in the ointment, but just a requirement that has to be factored in is scale. Right?
Without a doubt.
People are building applications today that the scale boggles. I mean, you're talking about early on at Red Hat. Look, Red Hat, Red Hat Linux, that was what we built, scalable applications from an OS perspective. The guy, I interviewed a company right before this interview. They're taking the OS out of it. It's this no ops thing, and they handle all the ops for you in the OS and all of that. But because it's like scales, widely distributed applications in tens of data centers at the same time, the scale is just mind-boggling. How do you? Think about building. So this company had 36 minutes of downtime in 10 years. In 10 years.
It's impressive.
Think about that, right? That's nuts. But, I was in the data center business. That doesn't happen. We used to worry about 4 nines and 5 nines. Anyway, but this is a challenge, right? Yeah,
scale is a huge challenge, and it's we've got a number of very, very large customers that, to be frank, are using our technologies today in ways that we didn't dream they would use those products even 3 years ago. They are stressing our ability to scale to both large application environments, large number of users that need to access the technology, the level and speed of reporting that they need in order to really have the visibility that their business demands. I think it's been a challenge for a lot of us as we move to this cloud-first world, as we move to this cloud-native world. That ability of an organization to take an application and blow it out globally so quickly. And we've got to all be able to keep up with that. It's something that we spent a lot of time working on. The last 18 months, we have invested a tremendous amount of engineering effort in that issue of scale. How do we allow a really large customer of ours in financial services or in distribution or in healthcare or health and life science? How do we allow them to leverage our technology across thousands, tens of thousands? We have a customer who's got 40,000 developers in their organization. And if you think about the number of applications those 40,000 developers are building and having to test all of that and make sure it connects and works together, who would have dreamed that's what we would be doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
Doesn't happen without a heck of a lot of automation, man. That's the only way I see it being able
I
to
agree.
work.
I don't know how you survive. And, and it's interesting. You mentioned early on, things don't go away. They evolve and change. And even if you look at the testing market today, it's still mainly manual, which actually surprised me because this is not a market I lived in before I got to Tricentis. So I spent 18 months learning as much as I could possibly learn. And one of the things that surprised me the most is how much manual testing we're still doing. And when you think about the speed at which technology is moving today, manual testing simply can't keep up.
Right. It's like a recipe for failure is what it is. But anyway, hey, Kevin, for people who want to get more information about Tricentis, of course, it's tricentis.com, TRICENTIS. Anything other? Don't say anything that's going to get us in trouble. But any other big news on the horizon from Tricentis you want to share with the audience?
Well, you should definitely be watching because we're going to deliver a whole lot of new technology this year. We're going to release more new product this year than we've released in the last 5 years combined. A lot of great new products that are going to really go to the point we've been talking about is the way we build, deploy, use technology has been changing. We want to make sure we're keeping up and staying in front. So we have a number of new products that I'm really excited about that we expect to release between now and the end of the year. I won't provide a date yet because, it's not done until it's done. But Definitely come to tricentis.com, look for these new technologies. We're focused on developers and DevOps teams. We have several new products going to hit the market specifically aimed at those users. And then we're also doing a lot of work around this concept of scale and reporting and visibility. So a lot of great new things coming. So definitely keep your eye out for our announcements and follow our website because we've got some great new products that I think a lot of your viewers are going to be really interested in seeing.
Fantastic. Kevin, man, thank you so much for coming on Techstrong TV. Thanks to you and all of our friends at Tricentis for sponsoring DevOps Unbound. We do some great stuff there. And continued success to you and the whole team, man. Keep doing what you guys are doing here. We love it.
Thank you very much.
All right, Kevin Thompson, CEO of Tricentis here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment with another great guest here on Techstrong.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV segment. I'm really happy to have back on our show my friend Brian Gilmore from Influx and the folks behind Influx DB. Hey Brian, welcome.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be back. How are you?
I'm good. Brian, I want to make sure I get it right because I've messed it up in the past. Influx DB is the database, and that's an open source time series database.
You all right?
Influx DB. The company, though, is Influx.
Influx Data.
Influx Data. That's
yes,
what
all things data. Exactly.
Got it. So it's Influx Data, and the URL for the company is influxdata.com.
It is, absolutely. And you can also find us on GitHub, too.
Yep. Okay. As long as we're on the subject, what the heck? Brian, talk to us about InfluxDB, what it is, what it does, as well as Influx Data and what you guys do there.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we're hyper-focused on a type of data called time series data. It's really easy to think of this as sort of any numeric progression that you would want to track over time. I think the simplest examples of this for most people are things like the prices of stock over time or the temperature outside of your home over time. But most of our customers are using it for use cases that are in either the IT space, monitoring like very precise metrics coming off of infrastructure and applications. We're seeing a lot of use in IoT as well. So all of the sensors and the actuator movements, whether it's on the industrial side of the house or on the connected products, like all of the smart home gear. And then finally, we're seeing a lot of emerging use of our product in advanced scientific, academic, and technologies, like a lot of places where technology is interfacing with things like outer space or, theoretical particle research at CERN, those types of use cases. So,
absolutely. A big theme that we're going to be exploring over the next months is let's call it the DevOps of things. I don't want to take credit for that. I actually learned that word from my friend Shlomi Ben-Haim, who's the CEO at JFrog. But DevOps of things, right? We have all of these, non-traditional computing devices that are running software,
yes,
are gathering data.
Yes.
And of course, anytime we gather data, we have to store and analyze that data and all that good stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And, and a lot of it there's a lot that's scientific and manufacturing and industrial, and something like time series databases is a great use, a great application for the kind of that kind of data, right? For the insights it provides.
For sure. I mean, even if it's just to understand how that stuff is working and performing, you're talking about, there's a sort of term for a lot of that technology called, it's being called the edge again, which is sort of related to the old on-premises. But edge technology, especially at the sort of scale it's being deployed, becomes very difficult to manage and make sure that, latencies are not a problem, CPUs, memory used on those devices from a pure DevOps perspective. So yeah, we see a lot of opportunity there too. It's kind of like, we win in all cases, whether it's somebody sort of monitoring the underlying applications and infrastructure of a highly deployed hybrid edge and cloud environment, or if they're actually analyzing the data that, those edge devices are interfacing with across that sort of cyber physical divide, like the sensor readings, the actuator control, that type of stuff. So it's an exciting sort of new paradigm for technology and one that requires databases and other technology that really sort of understand and accept the distributed nature of those applications. And that's one of the reasons that we built EDR, which we talked about the last time we were on the show. And it's one of the reasons that we're really excited to launch our cloud native offerings.
Absolutely. And Brian, we didn't mention your role at Influx Data.
Sure. Yeah. So I help with all of the emerging technology sort of application of our program. So, whether it's IoT, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain, artificial intelligence, sort of making sure that, not only what we're building, but how we're presenting that to the market and representing it, hits home for those users who are sort of out on the bleeding edge of technology.
Cool. Great stuff. All right. We got that out of the way. Let's turn to the news at hand. Earlier this week, you guys announced some native collectors for Influx DB. And, let's assume our audience isn't as technical as it is, and they don't even understand what a collector is, let alone a native collector. Brian, make us smart on this. Tell us what we got.
I will do my best. So if you think about, especially when it comes to IoT, but in a lot of other sort of application architectures these days, machine to machine is like the functional component of the application. So you have machines talking to other machines, you have humans talking to machines as part of automation, orchestration, coordination, like autonomy, all of that. Now, there are these sort of message brokers that exist at the central hub of most of today's and the future's machine-to-machine communication. So right now, these are brokers for things like MQTT, AMQP, CoAP. You see some use of brokers like Kafka, Amazon Kinesis. And so these are already the sort of portals that these many machines are using to communicate with each other. Now, getting data from the machines connecting to brokers in the past was difficult because you either had to address the individual machine directly and ask it for information to store in the database, or you had to write script or codes that could kind of like, look like another machine or look like a client to the brokers and could accept data that way. So what we've done with these native collectors, we've actually created a new service that runs in our InfluxDB cloud that allows you to take your InfluxDB and connect it up to any message broker's MQTT to start that you are authorized to communicate with. And then you can very easily sort of plug into those streams of machine-to-machine information and essentially eavesdrop in and grab information off of that and automatically ingest it in your database so that you have sort of an automatic and easy button way to create histories of the machine-to-machine messages without really impacting or having to change or update or modify your existing applications.
I love it. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Great.
We've been thinking about it for a long time. So
I hear you, but you know what? Because people,
you know how it is in the tech world, right? People bandy about words and phrases and things, and we assume everyone knows what we're talking about, and then you find out some people will it be man enough or not proud enough to admit that they don't understand, and then others will not be, right? But they'll just assume they understand, but it's a mistaken assumption, and they just compound it. So thank you for that.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about Influx and what this all, and InfluxDB and Influx data and what we're doing here.
Sure. So if you think in the past, I mean, we have ways to get data from these sort of machine-to-machine brokers, but typically what happens is you have to deploy a second agent, either our Telegraph agent or something else. You have to configure it using configuration files to actually address specific topics on a broker. So like a topic, like if you think about like a CB, right, or any type of radio communication, a topic is like a channel, right? Where, a machine will say, I am going to broadcast my temperature on this particular topic. And then anything that knows that can plug into that channel and listen in and hear every regular update of the temperature, for example. And you could do that before, but it was a little bit clunky. And especially where you already had a cloud-based broker, say like a Hive MQ broker for MQTT or AWS IoT or the MQTT sort of interface to Azure IoT. You ended up having to deploy like another container or another virtual machine just to manage this plugin. And it didn't make a lot of sense, especially seeing that most of, the communications were already available on a cloud-to-cloud, InfluxDB to whatever basis. So we created this new service. Now the user goes in, configures a cloud-native subscription. They give it the IP address of the broker that they want to authenticate against. They put in the authentication information, and then they configure subscriptions. And those subscriptions can be to one very specific topic, like this machine ID, this temperature, or it can be all machine IDs with that temperature, or it could be, using wildcards. You can really get smart about which topics you are subscribing to. And then once, you configure that, you set it, the authentication is verified, InfluxDB will just monitor those channels for you right in the background. And anytime that new data is posted to those topics by individual machines or many machines or whatever, that entire message will get ingested into InfluxDB. Now, one of the things that a lot of developers know about things like MQTT is that they are a communications channel and a protocol, but not sort of a data format or semantic. So the message itself in MQTT can really be of any format. And that's been one of the most challenging things about integrating data from brokers into databases of any type, whether it's a time series database or a relational database. So what we've done is we've added a parsing mechanism in between the sort of reception of the message from the particular topic that it's subscribed to. And you can then apply like JSON parsing rules or regular expression parsing rules to actually take the raw text of the message and pull out and label the individual pieces of information in the body of that message that you want to store in InfluxDB. So you can tell it exactly where the timestamp is, where the measurement name is, where the fields are, where the tags are. And then basically you are on the fly subscribing to, collecting messages, reformatting, parsing, and storing them now. And that data will just appear in real time in all your other InfluxDB based analytics, whether it's, stuff that you're doing with Flux or even just with our regular dashboards.
I love it. So not only is it, native collectors, as you mentioned, but because it's native, and because it's from Influx data, it's, DB itself, it really is a very quick, simple, but powerful way of getting that data in and analyzed and used, like harnessing the power of that time series database, on data in just in a really efficient way of doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's, I think reducing the number of steps and the number of obstacles, just the overall technical complexity is always key, right? Because, building enterprise solutions or customer-facing solutions, the fewer services that they have to manage, the happier they are. So by us taking that sort of piece over for them and just making it available and easily configured, we're hoping that it will actually allow a lot of developers to connect to data sources that before they just didn't have sort of the resources or the time to get to. So
it's also, I used to coach kids in football when my kids were younger. Every time you hand off the ball, there's a chance of a fumble. The less handoffs you have, the better off you are. Excellent. Hey, Brian, for people who want to get more information on this, where do they go?
Sure. Well, they can hit our landing page. If you go to influxdata.com/products/data collection /cloud native, data collection, cloud native hyphenated, but I'm sure there'll be a post in the link here.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do too is just, take a look at our homepage. I'm sure there'll be a flag or a banner, and there's a press release out and there's a blog, accompanying blog and stuff like that. But really, I think the best thing to do is just go sign up for a Influx cloud account. You will have to choose the sort of pay as you go commercial model because, it's very, very inexpensive. You may get offered some cloud credits, but this is a pay as you go only feature right now. So if you sign up for one of those accounts, you'll have access to it immediately. And if you have data already passing through a broker, it should just be minutes before you have that in InfluxDB and you can analyze it.
That's cool, man. I love it. Hey, Brian, thanks for coming on and thanks for the education for me and the audience today. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Keep up the great work. Say hi to all our friends at Influx Data.
I will. And thanks to you all again for your time and for helping us get the message out. Appreciate it.
All right. Cloud.
Native collectors.
Yep.
On InfluxDB from Influx Data. Check it out. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to RSA Conference, wrapping up our final day of coverage here from beautiful Moscone West, where it's a little less crowded, a little safer. We're in our bubble here of our studio. Speaking of safe, let me introduce you to Rich Mogul, who, he tries to say stay safe well, but in all honesty, my friend Rich Mogul, if you don't know him, has a background as a paramedic. And over the last 2 years, while we haven't been able to be RSAing it, Rich has been on the front lines working with mobile and
yeah, I do teams. So I do Team Rubicon as the volunteer thing, but I'm also a federal responder. But I'm not supposed to talk about that because then I have to get federal government approval to talk about that.
And so we will not talk about it, Rich. But we could talk about Team Rubicon, and that's actually a good thing. Let's talk about it for a second. Team Rubicon has a great presence at RSA conference this year.
Amazing.
They did a keynote yesterday, and they do God's work, right? They're out there helping a lot of folks from the services,
Yeah, it's pretty
Fortunately,
cool.
we still have a lot of problems with service people's mental health.
Yeah, and so the goal of Team Rubicon, there's kind of basically the mission provides two things. One is for veterans to continue to serve. Now, I'm not a veteran myself, but I come out of the emergency services community. So we're like 75% vets, another like 5 to 10% like what we call kick-ass civilians, which is first responder types like myself. And then we have just anybody who wants to sign up. So like a buddy of mine from college, it turns out, I found out, that another friend ran into him on an op. He has no background in any of this, in operations, we call it.
Yep.
But so it can really help with the mental health aspects of people because it gives them the camaraderie and the teamwork and the support structures. We have mental health built in and baked into the program. And then yet we go out, we do disasters. So like I'm getting text messages while we're sitting here because like the wheel went flat on one of our trailers as they're hauling it up to Flagstaff, Arizona to go do a fire mitigation operation. Chop down trees so when the rains come, it doesn't like all these dead trees don't destroy the town nearby. Yeah. So it's been great. And for COVID, I went out the door 3 or 4 times with them. A couple weeks in the Navajo Nation as a paramedic. I actually helped run vaccine operations for Maricopa County, 6th county in the country. We worked with the Maricopa County Department of Health Medical Reserve Corps. We were helping at food banks, stuff like that.
Absolutely. God's work. And thank you for that, by the way.
Well, I had to pitch it. So
well, I know, but it makes me proud to say I know you when you do stuff like that, as opposed to some of the other stuff you do.
No one's proud of that.
Right. But and when Rich isn't busy helping people, though, he's probably one of the, in our industry, in our little security community, Rich is very well known. He has a background as a Gartner analyst. Then he left Gartner and partnered with our friend Mike Rothman in Securosis, which has been a successful analyst firm now for about 12 to 15 years?
Yeah, I think 13, 14.
Yeah, right in that range. And, it was always kind of Rich's dream. Well, not dream, but he was driven to develop something around cloud security, right? And as the advent as cloud security became more mature, as DevSecOps and so forth started to emerge, Rich has been working for it. He used to tell us about it every year. He wasn't secretive for the last 5-6 years at least.
Yeah.
Building in his own laboratory a product that actually, became known as DisruptOps was the company, right?
Yep.
And it was, originally explained to me as guardrails for developers. Fair?
Yeah, and it's changed over time.
Yeah, I'd say that.
And focus on cloud security operations.
Yep.
And so doing a lot of like automation within cloud, but less like there's this CSPM tools that focus on assessments. We have some of those capabilities, but our stuff was far more focused on operations, getting shit done. Sorry to steal from Team Rubicon again.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so Rich and Mike, I just want to lay the foundations here. Bear with me. So Rich and Mike formed DisruptOps as a company, and they were joined with 2 other friends of ours. You can tell this is sort of an incestuous thing. 2 other friends of ours joined in with them. My friend Jody Brazil, and Brandy Peterson, excuse me, who come from the Kansas City security family, Gary Fish and them. And of course, Jody, besides being CTO of FishNet, was the co-founder and CEO of Fireman.
Yep.
And Brandy, I think when Jody left, Brandy took over as CTO at FishNet.
He was CTO at FishNet for a while, and then he went to Fireman for a little while as well. Yep.
Well, they both left Fireman, got together with Rich and Mike and formed...
I think I'm giving away the end of the story here.
Yeah, I am. It's okay, but it's okay. They're following along. Bear with me, folks. So they formed DisruptOps and doing their thing about, maybe a year into DisruptOps, year and a half.
No, it was
2 years.
More than 2 years. So yeah,
2 years. Just when Jody thought he was out of Fireman, they pulled him back in, and along with Jody, they pulled in Rich and Brandy and Mike and the whole DisruptOps team. And DisruptOps is now part of Fireman.
Yeah, so they acquired us, but they wanted us
It was
to
a little bit of not
take
your
over.
typical acquisition. It was kind of reverse merger.
It was because Jody took over as CEO and Brandy took over as CTO. Matt Eberhard,
Same as it ever
COO
was.
product, like
Yep.
our team became the executive team
At Firemont.
at Firemont. So it's kind of interesting. And it took me a while, about 6 months, and then I decided to go over.
All right. Net. After all these years, my friend Rich Mogul has joined the dark side and is now a vendor.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's not as bad as they told you. You just got to bathe a little more often. But what officially is your title?
So I'm a SVP of Cloud Security.
Excellent. All right. So we've got that out of the way. Rich, let's talk about what is Firemont doing with the Disrupt Ops product, with their existing portfolio. You know, Firemont historically kind of managed security operations. Firewall was a big part of it.
Yeah, so the Firemont had two products before the acquisition, or two product lines: Security Manager, which is firewall, network security, policy management.
Yep.
So all of for places you have 12, 100, 1,000, 10,000 firewalls. If you want to make a rule change, we can do all the analysis and the compliance checks and do all the kind of manage all the workflow for that, make sure you're not going to break things. And it came out to Jody. He wrote scripts because he made a firewall rule change and it broke a production app back in his Fishnet consulting days. He wrote some scripts to make sure that wouldn't happen again. And 15 years later, it's
Firemont.
It's Firemont. I mean, it was Firemont for 15 years. We also have Lumeta, which is cybersecurity asset management. And so DisruptOps came in because those products weren't really cloud centric at all. They're very traditional data center. That's the bread and butter of Firemont's business. But then we brought our DisruptOps in. And so kind of three things that we do on the DisruptOps side. We have a really cool thing. We're just starting to soft launch. I shouldn't even talk about it because we might change the name. It's called Cloud Access Manager for just-in-time IAM privileges and like restrict things, your sessions to IP addresses, all real-time natively integrated with cloud. We do cloud detection and response, and we do a little bit of cloud SOAR, and that's an area we're enhancing. But the cool thing now is we're looking at ways of leveraging all three of these things in terms of product strategy. So how can we enhance the cloud capabilities of the data center products, and leverage that for the cloud side, but also everybody's hybrid. So are there aspects of the DisruptOps so we can actually bring into those as well? And so we've kind of gotten we've been in there since like September, October. Now we're getting to the point of like, we've got a good kind of handle on what that's going to look like. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a challenge to move, make these kinds of changes, but it's happening and everybody's excited. So,
you know what? Yes, it's a challenge. Yes, you have 15 years kind of inertia built into Firemont because look, they had a successful business.
Well, please don't say the past tense. We still do make money.
No, I'm saying even before the cloud security.
Yeah.
They had it's an ongoing business here. Though we in the security industry love to focus on whatever the shiny new trinket of today is, there's still a lot of stuff in people's data centers.
Yeah. There's
still a lot of firewalls out there. There's a network gear and all of that stuff. So there's still money to be made there. But of course, in the security business, well, what's your cloud strategy, right?
Yeah.
And we all hear that. And that was always kind of an Achilles heel for Firemont. Well, it's not anymore.
No, I mean, not just what we have, because for the older, there's a time it takes to implement some of the changes on the product. And some of those are all well in motion already. Mm-hmm. But there's also the fact that you just brought in a cloud startup team to run this company. We've got some new product manager types in there, and on the development side as well, new VP engineering. So like it's
changing, but it takes time to change. 15 years. And, I'm not saying it's a cloud first mentality because you don't walk away from your customers. You don't walk away from your heritage, but it's certainly, it's like grafting a new branch onto a healthy tree.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
I like that.
You like that?
I'm going to use that.
Yeah, do it.
So let me call our CMO.
Call him. You know what? Well, how CMOs are. Anyway, so Rich, we're here at RSA, It's not as big as years past, but it's still pretty damn big.
It is way more people than I expected.
Yes,
this year,
me too.
by a lot.
Fair.
Yeah.
What's been kind of the feedback for you guys? Because you're actually doing booth duty now for the first time.
Maybe not as much as I was scheduled for.
Yeah, well, you've been hiding out.
I've had meetings.
Rumor has it you're up on the second floor there, and, and on a need to know basis. And since it's the last day, we could say it.
Yeah, well, I had to go do an interview.
Yeah.
And,
but what's the feedback been on the floor?
So, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. Our team is actually pretty happy. The numbers, the quality of, I hate to look at it this way, but now I'm on the vendor side. I have to the people, the leads, the kind of questions they got, that part was happy. But just talking to attendees, I had breakfast with a friend of mine who works in a large org this morning. And he really appreciated because he was able to kind of get down there and he's like, hey, we're looking at these 5 products and I don't have to set a schedule and then I'm going to get my regional sales guy and the regional SE, whatever. He's like, I go to the show floor and they bring their best demoers.
Right.
I'm like, I didn't even think about that because I've not had to do that.
Never had to do it. Yep.
So I'm like, yeah, I look at our SEs and those are the SEs I see, the same SEs at all of our big events because they're our best people for doing the demos and the executives are right there.
Yep.
I was at the booth and some guy showed up because there was a meeting scheduled and it got mismatched. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, let me,
pull them in.
Yeah, let's pull them in. We had, an exec right there. We didn't have to run around and find anybody and schedule crazy calls. So,
so that is one of the nice things about the RSA show floor.
Yeah.
Right. You do get to the people. I know even our team enjoys going down there because they get to right to the right people.
Well, it was funny. There was one company we were trying to figure out if they're competitive with us or not. And one of the areas where we do some stuff on the cloud. And Jody sent me a text message about them. And it turns out a friend of mine is VP of product there, a guy I've known for 20 years since I was a Gartner analyst. And I didn't know he had moved over there. And then, all right, let's go. And we went, we grabbed beers, we compared notes. We're going to swap some demos.
Beautiful.
It was great.
That's the nice thing about RSA too, is I said it last night at our party. As much as it's about products and security and the industry, it really is about people, and it's those people connections that you've made 20 plus years in this industry.
If you are on Twitter as we are, and which does not represent the world, but there's a lot of people who like to crap on bash. You say bash, I said the other word.
Okay.
On RSA. And other conferences in general. Oh, it's too expensive. Nobody can afford it or whatever. They come up with all these reasons. I go, okay. So first of all, I'm on the conference committee. There's 3 layers of checks to make sure there's not vendor promotion in presentations. 3 layers. It gets filtered, comes to us, we filter it, and then every presentation's reviewed. So it's not like vendory. There are some of the keynotes are vendory. They're sponsored keynotes. There's scholarships and stuff and other things that are done to try and help more people get here. It's easy to get expo passes if you just want to do that part.
Free.
And so I think this is, they're trying to do the right thing.
I look, I've been coming to RSA for 20 years, right? 21 years. I have been a fan of RSA and defended this in the past. And we've been through the booth babes and all this stuff.
They were one of the first to get rid of them.
Yeah. They were. I remember writing back when blogging was blogging.
Yeah.
I used to write about it. But here's the bottom line. There's always going to be the kids who are too cool for school.
Yeah.
There's always going to be that fringe who said, you sold out to the man and power to the people and all that stuff. And I don't begrudge those people. Let them go, in years past, they would go to security B-sides because that was, a lot of them kind of,
Well, they still do. There was B-sides.
Yeah, but, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. B-sides isn't what B-sides were when Jack started doing these in Vegas and San Francisco. B-sides, is it really that much different than RSA? It's not a big thing, but it also the relationship between B-sides and RSA is symbiotic.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's recognized that. I think the whole look, the people are going to be people. The haters are going to hate. It doesn't stop 20,000 plus people in the middle of, a COVID resurgence here a little bit from coming to this show. And I think that speaks volumes.
No, and one of the things, I mean, we like to talk, products and tech and industry, but I personally had a very hard time coming out. Not just because of COVID fears. I've worked front lines, but I'm with COVID patients. I know what my risks are, but I've been so at home and everything else and not traveling. And this, we're getting into the personal, this is not normal, but it took a lot. And not just for this, we had Phoenix Comic-Con last weekend, Fan Fusion's the official name of it. And getting out for that with the kids and stuff when I've just been used to not being around people. But I came here, and I see you and so many of our other friends, and not everybody, because not everybody's around anymore. Some are retired, some are no longer with us. And we were talking about that last night, and I don't want to bring things down. But that, seeing those reactions, because look, some people, it's a job, they go to the office, they go home, they're done.
Yep.
With what we do in this particular industry,
it's very much
we have
a
community.
lifestyle. Yeah, it's a community.
And, I've known you for
20 years.
20 years.
Close to 20 years.
And we don't live in the same states. And I consider you a very good friend. And we've hung out and gone to amusement parks together. And
we've done
overlapped
all around this industry, though. And because that's
exactly
the common thing where you make friendships. But I'll tell you something else. And I've told this to other people. Well, nothing to do with security, but in regard to COVID and choices we make. As you get older, when you're young, that road goes on forever, right? That horizon is way, way out there. As you get older, that horizon becomes a little closer. But my feeling is life isn't a soccer game. And at the end of regulation time, God's not going to give you bonus time because you missed out because you were afraid of COVID. And so I'm not saying to be reckless. I'm not a reckless person. But you've got to weigh the pros and cons of you can't live your life in your house on Zoom.
Yeah, and you can live part of your life in your house on Zoom.
But there are certain things I think you got to live.
I mean, I'm sitting here with my mask.
I have mine in my pocket too. And when I'm not in my bubble, I have my mask.
But it's risk management. So I saw people on Twitter like, oh, you're an idiot if you go to RSA. You can't say you don't understand risk management. I go, well, okay, I do. And I guarantee most of those people, I understand COVID better than they do. They haven't.
I don't doubt it for a second, Rich.
And the way I looked at it, for example, to go with you in the math is, one was the opportunity to see people. Two was I am masking almost everywhere. 3 is I'm vaxxed and double boosted.
Yep.
If I do get it, my risks are low for long-term consequences. But I'm also timing it. I have a test in my bag. We're done with this interview. I go to my hotel room and test. I'm doing a PCR tomorrow. I'm testing every day for 5 days at home. And I'm going to actually mask up around my kids to make sure, because they have summer camp coming up.
Absolutely. You don't want to miss camp over this.
We are now moving in it. There's the assume breach mentality we talk about. And with COVID, I have an assume infect mentality. And it's about managing when you are exposed to your infections and then knowing how that will impact your life. What's 2 weeks, what's 4 weeks out? And can you mitigate that and control? So I'm okay being exposed here because I know I can go home. I can still protect my family. And even if I get sick, it's not going to, and I don't want long COVID. I don't want to get sick. I've never had it.
No one I don't think anyone, that's like the developers who stand up and say, I want to make insecure code. There's no one doing that. Yeah. And there's no one who wants COVID. I think the people who say you don't know about risk management, that's just their latest excuse why not to go to RSA, in all honesty. You want to say, I don't want to go to RSA because of COVID.
That's totally it, because that's your risk assessment.
I respect it, right.
Yep, 100%.
But don't think, well, look, I'm not going to change the world. I live in Florida. I've learned I can't change the whole world. Just worry about doing the right thing for myself and my family.
Yep.
Anyway, man, hey, Rich. Interviewing a vendor here for the first time, Rich Mogul. Wish you a lot of luck with Firemon, though. But in all honesty, you guys got a great team there.
Oh, yeah. I work with great people. And like some people say that, but I've worked with them for 5 years. And
I know these people a long time. They are great people. And it's a good product, and it's in the right spot. So we're expecting big things from you.
Oh, I hope so.
Keep us posted. All right, man.
Thank you.
Rich Mogul, VP Cloud Security.
Yeah.
at Fireman here at RSA Live. We're going to take a break. We'll have someone else on here in just a moment.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
The Engineering the Change Scholarship Program offers a life-changing opportunity for a winner from an underrepresented community to change their lives by becoming a full-stack software developer.
The background that you might see that it's a weakness, it's a strength in this field because everyone is constantly looking for people that are going to bring new ideas.
It's an intense 12-week course that is not for the timid.
For real, who's mastering this right now? Because I sure am not.
So you guys are badass. Like as a class, you guys are crushing it.
You've got to be dedicated. You've got to be ready to do it. Your life has to be ready for it. Follow us as we go through this cohort's Engineering the Change winner on their journey to becoming full-stack engineers.
Say with great power comes great responsibility.
Take it down to 3 finalists. Toria, I'm going to ask you, who really kind of stood out for you?
The 3 people that stood out to me the most was Stephanie and another woman named Carly and a man named Donald.
Mitchell, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. Actually, I think those are 3 great candidates, and I mean, you know very well, right, what it takes to go through this process.
Look, I still love good written and oral skills. I like people who can speak well. I like people who really can write well.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you something. To your point about Stephanie, is it Stephanie Sanchez? Yeah, Stephanie Sanchez. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
Okay. And bring her into
the golden buzzer.
Right? So,
she's in.
The 2 other people you mentioned, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this.
Yeah.
She said something like, her brothers could do it, why couldn't she? Mm-hmm. Right? Wasn't that in the essay?
Yeah. That's something that stuck with me, especially as a woman.
Yeah.
Because I think that for her, she was like, if they can do it and there's not enough women in tech, like she was like, I can do it too. And I love that.
I say send Carly to Hollywood.
Golden buzzer?
Yeah. Donald Bazell, really nice guy. What I liked about his essay is his genuineness. Is that a word?
Yeah, being genuine.
He's genuine.
Yeah.
Right? You got it from him. My only caveat on this is he really doesn't have any tech experience.
Yeah.
So if it's your vote and Mitchell, you don't object, I say let's give Donald the last ticket to Hollywood. And those are our 3 finalists for Engineering the Change. Let's bring them in for interviews and pick our winner.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
Sounds
good. All right. We'll see you on the next show.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, welcome back. Good to have you back with us here at KubeCon and Cloud Native Con. I have the pleasure of being joined by Jonathan Simons, who's CMO with MinIO, neighbors here in our booth alley. Welcome, Jonathan.
Yeah, I've watched you interview the intelligentsia of the cloud native world for the last 2 days.
You've been studying up. Huh?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
you're a little bit of a intelligence gathering. Hey, well, tell us about yourself and tell us about MinIO, and we'll kind of dive into the data world and Kubernetes.
Yeah. So my name is Jonathan Simons. I am the CMO of MinIO, as you mentioned. I was the first marketing hire. I've been there a little over 3.5 years now. And it's been a really extraordinary journey because the world has changed a lot from a technology perspective in that time. MinIO is an object storage company. We're known for a couple things. One is that we're multi-cloud, so we are on every public cloud, we are on every private Kubernetes distribution, so OpenShift, Tanzu, SUSE Rancher, HP Ezmeral. We're on bare metal, we're at the edge. The binary is only 100 MB, so you can have the same consistency from the edge to the core. And we're also known for performance, which I think we'll probably talk about here in a little bit. But object stores are now really primary storage in the cloud, and so they have to be fast, and so they have to be able to run databases, they have to run AI and ML workloads, and so forth. And so those two things really are the primary things that distinguish MinIO from the rest of the world of object storage.
It seems like object storage speaks directly to developer and kind of the cloud native architecture, and as well as Kubernetes as opposed to storage in general. So clearly, it sounds like you're addressing that, but even more so is the data sprawl that's across multi-cloud, non-cloud environments that you'll run in lots of different locations. So that's part of the problem you're addressing, correct?
Yeah, so listen, multi-cloud is one of the great challenges that enterprise face today, because whether it's by acquisition, or whether it's by shadow IT, or whether it's by design, or whether it's any number of reasons, all large enterprises are multi-cloud enterprises. Nobody is in a single cloud, and if you are in a single cloud, you basically have taken on risk that you probably want to start to mitigate at this point, because so much of your business may be dependent upon that single cloud. And so multi-cloud is a great challenge, and the way it is solved is through Kubernetes. And so MinIO is a Kubernetes native object store. The company was started in 2014. Containerization was in full swing. Orchestration still wasn't fully decided, right? You had Mesosphere.
It's pretty early in,
you had Docker Swarm,
public adoption,
and you had Kubernetes. Obviously, we all know that Kubernetes ran the table and extinguished everybody else from that market. But that was always in our DNA, so containerization, orchestration, and then Kubernetes was a natural for us. That's because of RESTful APIs. You talk about developers, that's what they want. They want HTTPS. They want RESTful APIs, and so that's what that delivered them, and that's what S3 delivered them as well. And so the ability to basically take S3 and through Kubernetes make object storage available anywhere is what we're providing, and that's what enterprises are desiring today. AWS S3 is a remarkable product. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude. Having said that, it only runs inside of AWS S3. Data, to your point, exists everywhere and is being created everywhere, from the edge to the core. It's just being created in all these different places, increasingly by machines. And so what you need is the ability to run that AWS-like infrastructure anywhere you want to. Kubernetes gives us the ability to deliver that for enterprises.
And it gives you that consistent interface, pattern, storage. across all those diverse environments. So you don't have to worry about API differences between S3 and a Google Cloud or whatever it might be, or SAN or wherever it might be, right?
Yeah, and that's a really good point because you have the Blob API, right? In Azure, Google's got its own Cloud Object Store API, and then there's S3, and those three don't talk to each other.
Right.
It's a huge issue. But if you can run MinIO across all three of those things, you solve that problem instantaneously. And you can just write your applications, which are probably already written for RESTful APIs in S3 today, and you can run it across that. And that goes for Alibaba Cloud, and that goes for IBM Cloud, and Oracle Cloud, and any cloud you can think of. So it is this ability to have a consistent API, consistent performance, consistent experience across all of those different platforms. And again, the cloud, and we talk about it in terms of, when we say it, we often say, it's the public cloud. But the cloud is really a mentality, it's an operating model, and that's what I think one of the big themes that we're seeing here at this Kubernetes is that it is an operating model, and whether its location is independent of that operating model. And so, having that cloud approach is what's driving adoption for MinIO.
Let's talk about, one of the things that always comes up with storage is performance.
Yeah.
And thinking about object, there was a day when object databases were new things, but they weren't high performance yet. And as we've kind of folded that in more to a software architecture than thinking of it as a database, what does that world look like? What's performance look like in an object storage world today?
Yeah, so I think historically people looked at object storage as sort of cheap, deep, and slow, and that was a function of what the appliance vendors were really designing for, which was archival data. S3 changed the game on that. If you go back and look even at the early days of S3, it's a very fast service. And that allowed object storage to become the primary storage in the cloud. Redshift is built on top of object storage. Snowflake is built on top of object storage. BigQuery is built on top of object storage. All the most successful services that run in the cloud are object storage. They're based on object storage. That's because object storage was basically made fast. MinIO followed in those footsteps. We've invested very, very heavily in optimizing for AVX 512 chipsets for our friends at Intel who are right next door to us. And so that goes into erasure coding, that goes into encryption, that goes into everything else. And so we're producing benchmarks that are like 365 gigs a second on reads, 160 on writes, on 32 nodes of NVMe, right? So at that speed, any workload now comes into play. So databases can speak directly to the object store and query the object store directly, and you're going to see more and more announcements in the coming weeks and months of first-class, giantly deployed across the globe databases that are now looking and making object storage their first-class citizen from a storage perspective. So that's what performance brings. It brings database workloads. The AI and ML workloads were already on object storage because of the requirement for both performance and scale. And performance at scale is a totally different animal. And Kubeflow ships, for example, with MinIO embedded in it. But you see those types of workloads, and that's what you get out of performance. It's not just vanity numbers, it's about business results for customers.
It's interesting, you add database products, technologies to the equation. Now you're open up to a much wider set of applications that is accessible to the cloud.
Yeah, and I think that's very uncomfortable for the traditional SAN and NAS folks because they fight this concept that object storage is primary storage, even though the evidence in the cloud is clearly there. They would like you to believe that again it's slow and but it's just a much more efficient and elegant way to approach the cloud, and it is Kubernetes native.
So I was going to say, it's very much in the Kubernetes architecture and very comfortable for developers. You don't have to adopt it; they're already doing it. That's how they think of storage.
They know it. This is just in their DNA. And one of the things that why we love coming to KubeCon is these are our people. Like every single person who comes up.
I've said in several interviews, like T-shirts and backpacks. This is my people.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But everybody who comes up is like, we love MinIO, we're running MinIO, and everybody we've interacted with, they know us already. We're not having conversations about what is object storage or what is MinIO. It is, we just love what you're doing, please keep doing it.
Now you have, I think, I don't know if I'd say unique, but certainly a very desirable adoption model. You don't have a big sales force.
Yeah.
Customers I don't know if I say come to you. Maybe that's overstating. I don't know. Maybe not. Tell us about how people get to you. Get to NIO.
So it is very. We've built a different machine. It's a much more efficient machine, and that's allowed us to do a lot of things differently than other organizations. We don't have a commissioned sales team. We have some really smart business people who have engineering backgrounds that if you squint, say they look and feel like somebody who's a senior advisor, and that's exactly what they are, but we don't have any commissioned salespeople. 100% of our business comes inbound, and it literally comes inbound through partners, or it comes inbound through hello at MinIO or sales at MinIO, or they walk up to the booth and say, it's time for us to talk about a commercial license. We've gotten to this size. And so it's AGPL v3, so it's frictionless from an adoption perspective, but AGPL v3 is an open source for open source applications model. It's a purist model, but if you're building a commercial application, you're going to need a commercial license. And so it is
it's well known and understood.
Yeah, and it's a really good model for us, and it's allowed us to get to the point where right now we're doing 1.3 million Docker pulls a day. And we're going to pass 1 billion Docker pulls here in a few months in aggregate, and they're just extraordinary numbers from a growth perspective, and just and you're growing off of huge numbers to start with. So we feel really good about the trajectory of what's happening at MinIO these days.
Well, speaking of 1 billion, you had a pretty impressive, really impressive fundraise. I think round B happened back in January, right?
Yeah. The world's changed a little bit since then. I think we all know that in terms of the great revaluation, as they're calling it. But we closed $103 million at a $1 billion plus valuation. Intel Capital came in and was the lead investor on that. Pat Gelsinger personally presented the term sheet to AB and Garima.
Yeah, not a bad thing to happen.
We align so well with his view of the world these days, which is developers of the the engine of value creation in the enterprise. He believes that deeply. That comes from his VMware days, but he also believes that increasingly data is going to be created outside of the data center. And so you have to be able to operate at the edge, and MinIO does that very well. So it was a very good fit. They were previously an investor in MinIO. We also brought in SoftBank's Vision 2 fund alongside all of our existing investors. But it's exciting, and that 103 million was really, it's a marker to the rest of the industry that we're here for a long time. We went 5 years on our first Series A, which was $23 million. Trust me, we can go a long way with the efficient model that we built without having salespeople and sales engineers in offices all over the globe with $103 million. And our revenue ramp just keeps on going up. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, I don't have data to back this up, but I think Pat Gelsinger's time at VMware really reshaped his strategy for going back to Intel and helping Intel think in a software world what Intel's role is and how to work with companies like yourself that are, let's face it, you're not a NAS, you're not hardware storage, you are object storage, and think about it much differently.
Yeah, I think he understands what software-defined storage is, why it's important in the marketplace, how that has to be optimized on Intel chipsets. I don't think there is any better person for that job at this time. I think that's one of the reasons that he went back. I think he feels a very strong moral obligation to the Intel brand, and I think he probably recognized that if it wasn't him, that, it may go in a different direction. And I think you think about mission-driven individuals. I think he qualifies in that regard. And like I said, I think you can already see his imprint on how they are operating today, and I think it's exciting, and it's good for the rest of the tech industry.
Yeah, investment in MinIO is a good example of that too.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, it's been fantastic talking with you. Appreciate the good neighbor without fences. We can actually have good neighbors without fences, as the old saying goes. So be sure and check out MinIO, as we talked about. It's really an inbound model, and a lot of people go check it out and get started and connect with what you can do with object storage and Kubernetes. So wish you the best. Have a good show.
Thanks you very much
for joining us.
I appreciate it.
I told you we'd have great interviews, and I delivered. So come back, and we've got some more lined up for you that are great, like Jonathan. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you in a few.
This is Techstrong TV.
Well, the distinct pleasure of being joined by Tim Eads. Welcome, Tim. Tim, CEO with vArmor. And great to be talking with you at RSA. I think that's what we're going to talk about. It's kind of, we're all at RSA. What is that all about? Tell us about yourself. Tell us a little bit about vArmor.
So first of all, great to be here. Fantastic to be at RSA. It's been 2+ years. And a lot of, swap your Zoom seats for your plane seats, come on in, and it's okay. So I'm Tim Eads, I'm the CEO of vArmor. We have a solution called the Relationship Cloud. We help people understand their risk and reduce that risk against ransomware by going in and understanding relationships and dependencies of applications, users, and infrastructure. So without putting agents down or API agents or anything down into your infrastructure, we suck the value out, build a relationship map to understand relationships and dependencies. And then from there, you can see what is happening, what should happen, and take control of what you want to have happen.
All those dots you have, but not how to interconnect.
It's crazy. Right? People don't know what's talking to what. It's just, that's how life is.
How about your background? Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, I'm English. I'm an old punk. I used to have a big Tomahawk Mohican bleach white Dr. Martin boots.
I remember that. No, I don't. I'm just kidding.
Bit of a hooligan. Started off in finance, decided finance was boring, moved into marketing, moved into sales, and then ended up being a CEO in the security industry.
Found your place, right?
Found your place. The good thing about security is you get fresh fruit every day. And as I've got older, it's my third company, you have a real opportunity to pass on and mentor other people. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big believer in leaning in and mentoring and building a community about trying to make this enterprise the enterprise is more secure, the country's more secure, and ultimately the end user is more secure.
Well, Tim, it's great to be back together. We're all kind of crave that being around other people again instead of just on the other side of the Zoom screen. And, I think the theme, what I hear from multiple people is, it's about being together, but we have to work together in new and different ways. We've got to up our game for security because it's not getting easier, it's not getting better. Everyone else is getting more sophisticated, and we aren't going to do it on our own. And we've got to band together. We've got to pull together as a real community.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't agree more. If you look at the world, the situation in the Ukraine, the strain that's put on the whole world, the political system, the rise of attacks, the rise of ransomware attacks, the mission has never been clearer. And the requirement for the community to work together has never been clearer. It's great. I was with Jen Easterly this week. She's talking about more and more public and private collaboration for that community to really lean in. So we're seeing that from the administration. But it's good to be back here, and the mission isn't lost. It was hard to do it over Zoom, to feel the same way, and the passion. But the mission to secure the enterprises, the countries, and the users, still there. Mm. And it's just great to be among people who share your same passion.
Sometimes that disruption causes you to reconnect and engage further, lean in, like totally. The term you're talking about. Well, tell us about, I'm really curious about vArmor. You talk a lot about relationships. And I'm an old data guy, right? So sure. And that always goes back to relationships and data that we're protecting and data obviously that you're collecting.
Yeah.
But it's, putting the dots together, connecting those dots is more than just the lines. It's the context of how
100%.
Those things fit together and why.
Yeah, I mean, so 10, 12 years ago, you talked a lot about application security, right? 5 years ago, 7 years ago, you talked about workload security, container security, really. But over the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to talk about data security. Data security is going to come in a whole bunch of different ways. Data at rest, data at use, data in motion, all that kind of stuff. But also data flows and how things are supported by the application. So we believe relationships matter, right? So relationships, workload A talks to B, talks to C, talks to D. You move B to the cloud, A, C, and D break. Unless you didn't understand it. If B gets compromised, A, C, and D are infected. So, those relationships and those dependencies are tremendously important, particularly as you weave in users and everything else to it. But then as you move forward, data dependency and data relationships become in place because data is more distributed than ever before. So as data moves out of a Snowflake or a Hadoop cluster into an app to serve it, to provide its function, you need to understand its lineage and how it flows. So we're big believers in relationships matter. RSA is all about that, obviously, because you can build a community. But it's how our product is designed and how our customers use it. Is because you do need data to understand relationships. You do need to understand data dependencies, and that will move into data for sure.
Well, too, it's also It's all over the organization. In my view, there's no such thing as IT anymore. I mean, calling IT is kind of about 20 years past due getting rid of that term, because a large percentage in some organizations is the majority of the technology investment, technology spend is happening in marketing and business units and all over the company. And then we do acquisitions and mergers and things really get mixed up. And thinking about that interconnection of data, how it's used, where it can break, how we secure it across that fabric that's in motion in some ways. It's not a static thing. It might be static for the point in time you look at it, but by the time you've turned away and looked at something else, it's probably already changed.
And incredibly hard for the security organization to look after, right? I mean, because you need to understand what is happening in your environment. Difficult to do, of course, all those business units and mergers and acquisitions that you just talked about. Then you need to look at what should happen, mapping that to policy. Should these things even have a relationship? Mapping that to policy at scale, and then turning around and say, actually, now I want to take control. Very difficult. So the security organizations, where to your point, you're right. There's so much power, and particularly through digital transformation, has gone to the consumer business units. I'm going to the cloud, like it or not, and it's all changing. But the security organizations, trying to stay out of the headlines, right? And so they've got to make sure they can see what is happening, and trying to do that in a simple way, because everybody's under cost constraints. Over the next 2 years, operational excellence, for the security teams, is going to be another topic that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, it's a bit of kind of the whack-a-mole, right? You can't control it all, truly control it.
Right.
It's changing out from under you. So at the same time, you need a way of understanding what it is, where it is, what's happening.
Yeah, and proximity to a problem, right? So I mean, if you actually understood relationships, you can say what application, which workload is behind a firewall, which one is not. So then you could work out your prioritization of patching and things like that. If it's all just straight logs and static information, you don't know what's talking to what in the frequency and the volume of those communications.
I want to explore more. Tell us more about, so once you have that kind of information, once you've got that interconnection of relationships and how those things are tied together, what can you do, what should you do?
Well, loads of things. I'll give you a great example. We work with a very large Fortune 500 retailer, and they're across everything, right? So they have CrowdStrike, they have Splunk, they have Azure, they have AWS. They're like Frankenstein, right? Everybody has a little bit of everything. So you suck all the value out, and you can see all the relationships, all dependencies. We see things like a Toshiba print server waking up every day and go like, does anybody want to print? Touching every single thing. There's CMDB, in this case it was a Cherwell CMDB that was out of date. And there's these things marked in the CMDB that was like marked that they're already decommissioned, but they were still communicating. So you talk to them and you say, hey, these are still communicating. They're like, yeah, let me go check. They come back, that's our SAP estate. Don't turn that off. It ships garments all over the world. I mean, so the insight that you can get by actually understanding it, and particularly in the modern world, at some point you have a container, and the other point you have a mainframe, and these all things kind of interact in some way, and certainly have a dependency. You can do many more. You can reduce your risk. You can lock things down, but your organization has much more insight of what it should be doing.
Making informed decisions, right?
Yeah.
Before I shut down the
SAP before I shut down the SAP service, maybe I should make sure that that's not the right thing to do.
Update your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Get out on.
Get ready for Congress, because you're going to be in front of Congress.
Right. Exactly.
That's harsh.
We're having fun here. So tell me some more about RSA and your take on kind of what's happening here. What are some takeaways you're garnering from this year?
So I've been coming to RSA since about 2002. So 20 years, just about right?
Same for me, yeah.
And I've thrown a party on a Monday night ever since then as well. The fun thing about RSA this year in particular is everybody's back. I mean, I was at the Goldman Sachs party on Monday night at the press club, and my friend Ward runs the IB stuff there. I'm like, Ward, are you normally this popular? And he was like, yeah, it's crazy busy. It's just packed. And it's like, it's nice to see people back. They're engaging and they're leaning in, and they want to solve problems. And it's, but at every single event that I've been at over the last 2 days now, 2.5 days, I guess, is just slammed.
You can't get in a restaurant or
can't get in a restaurant.
Get a table.
Yeah, you can't get in a restaurant. Can't get anything anywhere. It's crazy.
So a couple of themes of RSA you can kind of pick out. Zero trust is one.
Sure.
Application security, API security.
Yeah.
Things like what's sort of a vArmor take on those topics? How does that fit with you?
Yeah, we're big fans of zero trust. I mean, every time Biden comes out and says we need zero trust, it creates conversations with customers, but also it starts to solve problems for them. So the way we look at zero trust is kind of like there's two parts to zero trust. Like outside in, people like Zscaler do an amazing job of that, and we love Jay Shardy and the people over there. But also, we do it from the inside out, and you should do both in order to secure the enterprise. So we actually can see the reality of what actually is going on between applications and workloads and data flows and everything else, and map that across your estate. So you need to understand that in order to really understand zero trust. But that in combination with the people that do it from the device and the user in. Mm-hmm. So two sides of the coin. It's a journey, right? You should always start with discovering what is happening. Otherwise, you have no idea, what should. Mm-hmm. So in both cases with Jay and Zscaler and and companies like that, you should always start with discovery, but then move into monitoring and then move into control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a big topic around that too is things like cloud native microservices, the new kinds of contemporary software architectures where they're very API centric, reliant, API first. It's an approach that's called. That now you're talking about data shipping around in more kind of not public API. Well, you don't know. They may be public, could be public, private, internal, external. That's got to create a whole new kind of fabric of relationships for you to start.
Yeah, and also, you look at the growth of the APIs and the forecasted growth of the APIs. It's just massive. But that's an attack surface that is just out there, and some of those things will keep you awake at night if you actually really understood how bad it could get.
Maybe you don't want to know. Well, we decided that wasn't a good strategy long ago, but
yeah, exactly.
Well, Tim, it's great talking with you.
Yeah, fantastic. Have a chat.
Congratulations on being back and in person.
Yeah, it's been an amazing reunion, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So where can folks find out more about vArmor? Check out what you're doing.
Yeah, it's vArmor.com. Come and learn about relationships and how they matter to you and how they should matter to the enterprise. And relationships and dependencies are critical to understanding and securing your enterprise.
Great. Timmy, CEO with vArmor. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Steve Fazio, who is the product manager for Data Catalog at Talon. We're going to be talking about all things related to data governance. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Some people would argue that data governance is yet another example of a long line of IT oxymorons and that there isn't a whole lot of governance going on in the world. So what is the current state of data governance and how do we kind of clean it up? Because it is something of a mess.
With a giant broom. And that broom is going to be called, I think the newest term is DGAS, right? And, so I kind of laugh and I see data governance as a service. That's unique, because I think, to your point, the required acronyms has dipped to an unacceptable position. So they had to add a new one called data governance as a service now. So we have to learn that one. And I think some of the issue, what you described, is it's a mess sometimes, as people use the word data governance and they in certain organizations, and they don't know what they're trying to accomplish, right? What are they trying to accomplish? Do they have a clear business directive? Is it compliance? Is it a business analytics thing? So I think the data governance as a service is going to help, be that big broom that comes in and helps, whether it be physical services of data governance and metadata experts, let's say, offsite or offshore, helping out organizations, or physical automation. More and more, if you see more and more technology, more and more solutions is really focusing on automation and augmentation.
What exactly is data governance as a service? Because people in their minds would envision some sort of cloud platform that I don't have to go and stand up all the infrastructure to drive this. But what exactly is it governing, and how is it working?
Right. So I've seen it in two different ways, right? One, the services is basically services that are called. So in the past, maybe you had data lineage, right? It was something that you had to go into a catalog, you had to go look at, and you had to set up and to do. I see more that lineage being a service where you tell the service, hey, I have these two endpoints, and that service has access to all of our metadata, and that service generates lineage, and that lineage can be returned to wherever it's requested from, rather than someone having to physically go into a catalog or a lineage specific tool to go look at it. And it gets broader, things like stewardship. Data stewardship can be service, can be augmented and automated, like data profiling, data classifications, and things like that can be more automated and be provided as more of a cloud-based service rather than somebody sitting at a computer and doing that themselves.
So does that mean we're getting better at leveraging the metadata that we're generating on all these platforms? Because that's always been something of a North Star, but very few people ever got there.
Right. Good question. We are, in general, I would say, as an industry, and I see more and more customers being able to wrangle metadata. Metadata is the oil, right? Every company has so much of it, but you just don't know where to drill sometimes. With proper augmentation of the documentation of metadata to make it more readily available, now it's becoming more easier to actually use the metadata. I don't think, in my opinion, we had much trouble pulling metadata in. There's always bridges and things like that are metadata ingest. I think our problem in general, when I see customers, are they don't know what to do with it, right? They don't know where it is. So like you said, they need that North Star. They need a place to go to be able to understand what's there. And with the advancements in things like data classification being automated, being able to expose the metadata to the right people at the right time makes that oil, it's like it's a map, right? Now you can see where that oil is, where to drill, and where to get the most value out of that metadata.
How does that help bridge the divide that has always existed between business and IT when it comes to data management? Truth of the matter is, IT folks don't have a lot of insight into whether or not a particular piece of data is more valuable than the next. They're basically collecting and storing it, and they're in charge of the stewardship of the data. But the business folks know what data matters or should matter. And it's always been an issue in terms of figuring out how to give each of those squads the right insights that they need. So how is this all going to get bridged as we go forward?
There's so typically most, when you talk about business, right, they are more in terms and concepts and things like that. So like a glossary, you see like a business glossary of terms. The connection between the terms and the physical metadata, that's the biggest thing. And that's where I really see automation becoming more and more powerful. So as you bring in more metadata, that data can be classified and have terms attached to it so that the business can understand exactly what a piece of metadata is, how they can use it, and how it's related to all the other different things that they have in their ecosystem.
Where does AI fit in that equation then? Are we going to use that to attach the metadata or do the classification? I mean, how smart can smart get?
Well, it's as smart as the stuff you give it. It's as smart as I guess, the more you do, the better you get at it, as for profiling and classification, for example. So machine learning, especially for metadata, data classification. So if you have, let's say, a domain that you're trying to identify and classify, and there's customer information on there, there's PI information, you can use, rather than just using the data itself, you can use pieces of metadata. The machine learning can use, and AI can use, different metadata to help classify that data. So things more like not just column names and frequencies and content and quality and structure. You can start using things like relationships and glossary terms. So if a piece of data may have a term defined, AI can look and see other pieces of data, other columns or tables or things that also are defined by that same term, and that can help with the data classification, right? So it helps automate. And the more and more and more that process has to pull from, the more metadata that has, the more accurate it's going to get. Therefore, kind of reducing that human intervention of data classification.
Does this have cybersecurity implications? Because it seems like there's a lot of effort to secure data these days, but we don't even know what data is where. So that makes it kind of difficult. So what's the relationship?
Right, that's the first step. So whenever I advise customers on what to do, the first thing you have to understand is what's available, right? And is that data, is there PI in there? Is there anything sensitive? Is there anything that we don't want to put out to the enterprise? So things like sensitivity labeling, automating sensitivity labeling, so that when a piece of data comes in, it could be automatically labeled as confidential, top secret. Identifying things for masking or for obfuscating or for encryption, right? Those things need to happen at the time that the metadata is ingested, so you understand exactly. Once that data gets into that catalog, now it could be, you put those rules and policies. One thing that really controls all this are things like policies, right? So as you create new policies as an organization, those need to be actionable. And those policies, like you said, what's our policy on data privacy? Those need to be defined. And as new data comes in, data that meets that policy requirement, that needs to be attached also at the same time, so that personal information and privacy is kept throughout the enterprise.
As we go along, who's in charge of this? We see in some organizations there's a chief data officer. They may have the actual title or the role. But in the absence of that, who takes the lead, or what are you seeing in different organizations?
I've seen it all over the map. The size of the organization dictates sometimes the maturity level of that organization. Sometimes it's the CDO office, right? They're the ones that are the policy makers. So when you say in charge, I always say the folks that are making the policy. It's like government, right? We have police and we have government. Without the government giving the police the laws, the police have nothing to enforce. Same thing in organizations. They need to have that organized, that governing body that's actually putting forth those policies. And typically it is the CDO office. Sometimes it's in the line of business. So that line of business is responsible for their own areas, and they're the ones in charge for their own domain. There's been a lot of folks that I've seen that have kind of combined roles now. Data stewards and data architects are kind of, sometimes they're the same. They take the same role, but it really does depend on the size of the organization and the number of domains they have.
As we go along here, are we in danger of being overwhelmed by the amount of data that we're generating? It's not only the volume, but the speed at which it's coming across. Have we reached some sort of constitutional crisis breaking point?
I don't know if it's constitutional. I'd say we got, I'll put it nicely, we have 10 pounds of bologna in a 4-pound bag right now. As more and more data, the ease of getting data and the volume and veracity of data, especially as probably during COVID, we've seen during that whole time, there was so much more digital activity going on, everything from streaming to shopping to home health care. all of that generated just exponentially. I don't know the number exactly, but exponential amounts of new data, some of it very valuable. I think, again, we have an oil field, a tremendous amount underneath the ground, but we just don't know where to drill. And it is getting to a point to where and the manual processes is just too much. It's too much to do for people to sit down at a catalog or at a metadata management console and start pointing to all these things and do it. The services and the automation will help, I think, perhaps wrangle in some of that overflow of data that we have now. But I do believe we're at a point where we're already at a point where I think organizations have more data than they know what to do with. I don't know if it's a crisis, but they do definitely have more data than they know what to do with.
The other side of that coin, too, is are we collecting a lot of data we don't need because we don't know what the value is, so we save everything. We become hoarders.
It's like my garage, right? And I always say, the garage to me is like your metadata. You have a garage and you put things in it you don't really need. You throw things in boxes and you label those boxes and you put those boxes away. And then, you go to move. And that's like a new company has a new cloud, and we're going to migrate to the cloud. So you have a brand new empty garage, right? And they, instead of looking through those boxes, maybe that box says trophies on it. And okay, well, I don't want to bring my trophies. I'm going to throw that out. Well, you got to look in that box first. It may not have trophies. It may have tools. It may have ornaments. It may have something you really want to keep in there. And that's the profiling and the metadata to make sure that we move what we really want and what we're really using. If there's children's clothes in there that you don't really need anymore, don't move those to the new place, right? Keep those behind. So now you don't have a brand new shiny garage with the same junk you had before. So I think a lot of organizations, when they do their migration, it really should be a catalog first approach to make sure that they're bringing things that are valid, that it's good data still, it's working, it's being used, and it doesn't need to be kept for compliance.
All right. Hey, guys, you heard it here first. First, you got to find the data. Then you got to figure out which of that data is actually quality enough to worth refining. And then you got to actually refine it. And then you got, the opportunity to maybe start cooking with some gas. But short of that, we'll figure out how we go along as always. Hey, Steve, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Yusuf Khan, who's Vice President of Technical Marketing for Cisco. We're going to be talking about all things related to APIs, networking, and infrastructure. Yusuf, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
One of the things we are seeing is that developers and DevOps teams are getting more access to the underlying network infrastructure and also the compute and the storage and everything else through APIs. As that happens, do you think that the way IT teams are structured is going to change over time? Because we're not asking everybody to master some graphical user interface per se. We are giving them a little more control at the developer level as more things shift left. So what's the ultimate impact?
You're absolutely right, Mike. I think there is already a change that we see in the IT organizations, and also not just IT organizations in our customers, but also in our own teams, that there is a shift from the traditional networking experts to more DevOps type of expertise that we are looking to bring on board. And this is reflected in the same way in the IT organizations of our customers, where customers are bringing more DevOps capabilities within their teams that can bridge the gap between the typical networking operations paradigm as well as the development, right? And given this trend of consuming API for the infrastructure management is definitely fueling this requirement of bringing more DevOps capabilities within the environment. And then on top of that, you also see that there is a little bit of blurring the lines of the traditional networking ops versus security ops versus cloud ops versus DevOps. So there is a convergence that is taking place, and the speed of convergence is definitely different in different enterprises and different customers based on their comfort level, but that is definitely a trend that we are seeing. And as I said, we're not only seeing it in our customer, but this is also reflecting in our hiring practices within the vendors, within the companies who are developing the tools and these facilities for our customers also.
Does that mean it will just be a team sport or a different type of team sport? Or are we going to see the emergence of some sort of super administrator that uses APIs to manage everything? I mean, just exactly how will that team get structured? Or can I narrow it down to a handful of people?
So I think this, as I mentioned, that depends on from enterprise to enterprise, from customer to customer. And that also is a factor of where they are coming from. I mean, are they coming from traditional network operations perspective, or they're coming from more of a, like, okay, this is how we manage our server infrastructure, and this is what the same best practices that we would require on the networking infrastructure side also. So which end of the spectrum they are coming in from, and what expertise they have in the team. So that is the deciding factor in how they are adopting these practices and how quickly they are moving in that direction also. I mean, definitely we see our customers, given that we have customers on all end of these spectrums and everywhere spread across this spectrum also, right?
Is that changing the economics of IT? Because it seems like we should be able to manage more at scale using the same number of people that we traditionally had, or with folks with slightly different skills. But it almost feels to me like we have more compute resources and capacity than we can currently manage. So we just need a different approach to do it more efficiently.
I think, and again, you're very well aware that this is a response to the added complexity that we see in the IT environment today, right? And given that how our environments are progressing, how applications are progressing, given like from mainframe applications to distributed compute applications to microservices to the advent of public cloud first, then private cloud, then hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. I mean, the environment is getting more and more complex, and the OpEx of these IT organizations are not increasing or matching up the complexity that they are required to manage. So as a result, automation, as a result, infrastructure as a code are the necessary elements that they need to adopt in order to scale themselves and match the complexity of the environment that they're required to manage. So I think this is absolutely necessary for the IT organizations to adopt these best practices so that they can manage the complex environments. Because, I mean, this is the conversation that I have had with many customers about the shadow IT, because the organizations which are not able to manage and adopt these best practices, they see that people are swiping their credit cards from the development side and then building a shadow IT infrastructure and managing it themselves. So I think this is definitely a necessary tool set that everybody should adopt to be able to manage the scale.
How does this manifest itself for Cisco? You have a Nexus cloud and a bunch of APIs, but what exactly does the developer see when they go use that?
So I think from a manifestation in Cisco perspective, I mean, we have had a very strong focus for the last, like I would say, 5 or 6 years. I mean, with the start of SDN, or the start of the portfolio that we started shipping back in 2014, and very strong focus towards programmability. And the first thing we opened up is all the different programmability interfaces and API. Then we start building some automation. Then we started building some out-of-box integrations so that we can offer it to the customers. So given that we had this focus right from the very beginning, but then we were like looking at, okay, how quickly customers are adopting it, how quickly the tool set and the ecosystem is maturing for us, right? As a result, now, I mean, where we see some of the customers who are very, very advanced in adopting the DevOps as well as infrastructure as code practices. So not only they want to consume the API, and your question about what customers see is like, I mean, for example, when developer is coding an application and they're like, I mean, instantiating a VM, they want to be able to use the underlying networking infrastructure also in the same way as they're using a VM, and they should be able to call those resources. And when they are done using that application and they decommission the application, they should be able to decompose that infrastructure also. So that is what we are doing. And from a development perspective, from a vendor perspective, what it means is that when we are developing these tools and these resources and the products, we have an API first approach, right? And I mean, I have used this word, an API first approach, and somebody asked me the other day, what does that mean, that you have an API first platform? What it really means is that we develop the API first before we develop the GUI on top of it, or a user interface on top of it. And anything that we develop in that user interface or a GUI is basically using the API that we made it publicly available. And we don't stop it over there, but we also make sure that all the features in the API are clearly documented and examples are there so that customers can consume it easily also. We maintain the examples, we maintain code samples so that customers can easily adopt it. So there is a very, very strong emphasis in making sure that it is an API first platform. And second thing is that it is clearly documented and making it easy for customers to consume those APIs also.
Do you think this is becoming more important as we move to more modern application environments? It seems like they're a lot more latency sensitive, using microservices, and developers need to have more control over the network bandwidth because it actually has a direct impact on application performance.
No, you are absolutely right. I mean, this is one example. But it is also, for the, other use cases, which is, everybody is demanding agility, right? As applications are getting decomposed into microservices, and those microservices are at different places within the environment, whether it is sitting on one public cloud versus the other public cloud versus on-prem. There is an expectation from the network that network should be treated as a single entity, whether it is on-prem. Just like, customers or the developers are using microservices and they are able to exploit those different services irrespective of the location. They want to use the networking elements irrespective of where they are sitting, whether it is on-prem or within the cloud also. And all the attributes that we offer, whether it is a throughput, whether it is policy, whether it is segmentation, whether it is bandwidth, all these elements should be available to the developers based on the application characteristics. They should be able to manipulate and manage the networking elements underneath.
We hear a lot about service meshes these days. I'm not sure many people are using them just yet, but I'm curious from your perspective, where does that fit in this equation? Because some people are looking at that as like the new single abstraction layer to go invoke all these different networking services. So when will I use the API? Will I use the service mesh? Is the service mesh an instantiation of the API? Walk us through it a bit.
I think it's a very good question, Mike. And I think we also reacted to the initial demand and initial at the introduction of the service mesh, that service mesh would be the new way through which the network should react. Network should be able to reconfigure itself based on the changes within the application layer, and service mesh is a way to get it done. And we did base integrations with the leading service mesh. But what we have not seen is a wider adoption from our customer base towards that. So while we are ready on our end and we have done some integrations with service mesh, a couple of the industry-leading service meshes, we are waiting for customer use cases. We are waiting to understand how customers are going to adopt this technology so that we can build more on top of it. But at the moment, I think there is a little bit slower than expected response from the customers towards the adoption of the service mesh as means of manipulating network underlying technology. Right?
There's an old joke that says that the one thing that an IT administrator and a developer can agree on is that it's the network guy's fault. So the question that I would come back with is, how smart is the network going to get? Can we just get to the point where we'll declaratively say we need an application that has these attributes and performs to this level, and then the network will respond? Or how much expertise do I have to really optimize the network?
I think it's a very, very good question. And that is one of the design principles that we have when we are designing Nexus Cloud, is that how quickly we can give we call it route to innocence for the networking admin. That because, as you said, every problem is a network problem, whether the application is slow, whether the application has a reachability problem, everything comes back to the network. And how quickly we can able to identify the networking components that is being utilized by a certain application and what goes through it, what is the route it is taken, what the throughput, bandwidth, packet drops that is happening along the path of that. If there is an unreachability, is it unreachability because of a routing issue, or if there's an unreachability because there is a security configuration. And again, the application is sitting on-prem or whether it is sitting on public cloud or a hybrid cloud environment, as you said earlier. So how quickly we can give the power, give the visibility to the network admin so that he can quickly trace the path of an application and see what all going on within the network also. And then the second thing on top of it is that how we can do the integration to other assets, which gives you visibility into the application, such as AppD, right? And for example, with AppD integration that we have done on the Nexus platform, and that's going to be available on Nexus Cloud in future also, you can quickly identify that for this given application, is there a network problem happening or not, right? And then again, the second step is that now we have done integration with elements such as ServiceNow. So if there is a problem, then how quickly you can create a ticket and then automate that process also. So there is a lot of effort. I would love to give you and walk you through Nexus Cloud one day so that we can tell you that how quickly, we have a concept of network anomalies that you can identify that, look, there is a network anomaly on this application path, and this is three pieces of information that we provide you, that what is the impact, who is impacted, and how we can solve it quickly. So again, this is like path to innocence, button of innocence. This is all we are doing is that, look, this anomaly is causing this leaf. This leaf has this application running on it, and this is the integration where app integration comes into play, and then how quickly we can resolve it was the recommendation. So there's a lot of effort that we are putting in that place.
Do you think the shift to edge computing, and there's multiple flavors of edge, but as we put more workloads out at the edge, will force a lot of this conversation, a lot of these issues to be resolved because the IT environment will be more distributed than ever?
It is distributed. If you'll go to, like, for example, the 5G environment, the telco environment, it is extremely distributed at that time. And there is a lot of edge computing that is taking place in the 5G environment. But at the same time, then again, there is a need for uniform governance, policy, connectivity model, and visibility across the distributed sites as well as the central site. So I think the only thing that I see that becomes unique in a distributed environment is the scale, because now we have customers, and especially the service providers, who have thousands of these remote sites, hundreds of these remote sites, and they want an aggregated view, and they want to make sure that when they apply a policy, it is uniform across that, and they want to make sure that they have visibility across all those sites. So the networking problems and the networking solutions are similar, except that now we have to scale it a whole much. Right?
What is your best advice to folks then about how to get from where they are today to this brave new world that we're moving towards? How do I get started? What do you see customers doing, and what do you wish they knew beforehand so they didn't run into a gotcha?
No, I think that's a very, very good question. And again, during our conversations with the customers, a lot of customers ask us that, look, I understand I want to adopt these best practices. Where do I start? How do I do it, right? And my answer is always that, look, okay, let's start with DevNet, devnet.cisco.com, because this is where we take you step by step in terms of what is infrastructure as code means to you, right? How you can adopt these best practices, what is API gives you, how you can adopt some of these best practices around APIs, what integrations that we are delivering out of the box, because automation is something that we have tools that deliver out of box automation, but there are things that we make available on our platforms that can help you build custom integrations, such as we have SDKs for Nexus Cloud, which Python, as well as Golang SDKs, so that customers can build custom integrations on top of the automation that we deliver on the platform out of the box. Similarly, we have integrations that we have built in with Ansible from Red Hat, as well as Terraform from HashiCorp. So DevNet is the place where I ask the customers to go, because this is where we have code examples, we have sandboxes, they can try it before even they purchase those solutions. They can try it in a safe environment. And there we keep the code samples also, which is maintained as well as built by Cisco professionals. So that is where they should start, and they should try to experiment it and build the skill sets within their organizations so that they can harness the power of automation, harness the power of infrastructure as a code to keep up with the complexity level that they have in their environments today.
All right, folks, you heard it here first. It's taken a while, but NetOps and DevOps are finally coming together. Yusuf, thanks for being on the show.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had a fantastic slate of interviews with industry professionals to give you the latest and greatest news. And with our interviews at RSA and KubeCon Cloud Native Con, alongside another chance to see the first episode of Engineering the Change, we had lots of amazing content today. We'll be back again on Monday. So in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And thank you again for watching, and we'll hope to see you again soon. As always, stay strong, tech strong.